The first ships went missing where no one important was watching. Not near the core worlds, and not along the trade lanes, guarded by battle fleets and propaganda feeds. They vanished out on the fringes, where humanity was still deciding if it truly belonged among the stars. Prospector vessels, survey craft, silent ice haulers. Ships whose crews sent routine check-ins. And then never sent anything again. No distress calls, no debris, no radiation signatures. Just gaps in traffic schedules that grew too consistent to ignore. The outpost Hesper 9 hung in the dark like an afterthought, a rotating cylinder orbiting a gas giant whose storms glowed a faint, angry red. Hesper 9 existed for one reason: to listen. Its sensors were old, its crew underpaid, its value rated minimal by Fleet Command. And that was exactly why Dr. Annika Solano requested to be stationed there. As she always said, you don't hear danger where everyone is shouting. You hear it where no one thinks to listen. Solano floated before the sensor wall, her coffee bulb drifting near her shoulder. Her eyes were locked on a spectral readout that refused to make sense. The signal wasn't strong, but that wasn't the real problem. It wasn't noise either, not cosmic background radiation or some random interference. It was an absence, a subtle collapse in the expected returns, like a shadow cast by something that refused to reflect anything back. "Run the sweep again," she said quietly. The technician hesitated. "Doctor, that's the third." "I know what number it is," Solano replied without turning. "Run it again." The display flickered. Stars appeared as tiny pinpricks, their spectra neatly catalogued. Gas clouds shimmered. Radiation hummed in familiar patterns. And then a region where everything was too clean, too quiet. Solano felt her stomach tighten. "Mark that volume," she said. "Cross-reference it with missing vessel trajectories." The technician's fingers moved faster. A moment later, his voice dropped. They all passed through it. Everyone. On the far side of human space, Captain Lena Vos was simmering with anger. Her ship, the Radiant Edge, patrolled its assigned routes, moving with the quiet grace of a hunter deprived of its prey. Standing on the bridge, hands clasped behind her back, Vos stared out at a familiar starfield she had memorized long ago. "Still nothing?" she asked. Her tactical officer simply shook his head. No contacts, no emissions, no ghosts. Vos let out a sharp sigh. "I hate ghosts." She'd dealt with human pirates before. They were loud, sloppy, and predictable. They craved attention. But this new enemy, operating near the galactic rim, was different. Convoys were vanishing mid-flight. Escort ships never sent distress calls. Everything seemed perfectly normal right up until the moment these ships just ceased to exist. No debris, no signs of a fight. They were just gone. Fleet Command dismissed the early concerns. Statistical clustering, the analysts called it. Human error, others insisted. An unknown natural phenomenon. But I didn't buy it. Natural phenomena don't learn. And something out there was learning very, very quickly. The first recovered survivor shattered their illusion. His escape pod was found drifting near the Acheron drift. Transponder active, hull untouched. The pilot inside was alive. Barely. We brought him aboard the Radiant Edge, wrapped in thermal blankets, his pupils blown wide as if he were still staring at something unspeakable. I stood at the med bay entrance while the doctors worked. "What happened to your ship?" I asked gently. The man swallowed hard. "They didn't fire," he whispered. I stiffened. Who didn't? The survivor's gaze slid toward the dark bulkhead, as if the shadows themselves were listening. "They waited," he said, "and when we noticed them, it was already over." Dr. Solano arrived 2 days later. She and Voss met in a quiet briefing room, the kind designed to absorb sound and secrets alike. Solano projected her sensor data, and a 3-dimensional volume of wrongness bloomed in the air. This region, Solano said, highlighting it, doesn't block light. It doesn't bend it. It removes expectation. Voss frowned. That's not a thing. Solano gave a humorless smile. Neither is a ship that disappears without exchanging energy. Yet here we are. The survivor's testimony filled the silence. They weren't ships, he had said, calmer now. They were outlines. Like something shaped the dark and forgot to fill it in. He described movement without acceleration, presence without sound, fear that arrived before understanding. They didn't chase us, he said. They let us run. Solano closed the file slowly. Predators, she murmured. Voss looked up sharply. Not predators, Solano corrected. Assessors. Orders came down within the hour. A joint investigation task force, minimal publicity, full discretion. Officially, nothing was wrong. Unofficially, humanity had just realized it was no longer alone in the dark. As the starship Radiant Edge altered its course, heading straight for the galactic rim, Captain Voss stood alone on the bridge, the lights dimmed low. She could feel it then. It wasn't fear. It was ... attention. Somewhere, out there beyond the familiar stars, something had noticed that humanity was noticing back. And in that deep, silent blackness, beyond the edge of all our charts and all our certainty, the night hunters began to adjust their patterns. The hunt had just begun. First contact didn't start with a friendly hello. It was not the dramatic laser battle or some grand announcement we could all watch in documentaries years later. It began much more quietly when Lieutenant Harrow noticed the stars were wrong. He'd been staring out the viewport of his ship, the Radiant Edge, for almost an hour, watching the familiar constellations drift by. It was routine, almost comforting. Space always played by the rules. That's why we trusted it more than we trusted each other. But then a star blinked. Not out, but sideways. Harrow leaned in closer. "Bridge," he said, his voice slow. "Are we moving?" "No, sir," the reply came back instantly. "Course is steady." The star blinked again. And in that moment, Harrow understood. It wasn't moving. It was watching. Just then, the first alert chimed softly. No blaring alarms, just a quiet notification on a screen. Expectation violation. "That shouldn't be possible," she whispered. Expectation violation was the term they used when the sensor models failed so completely that the system couldn't even describe how it was failing. Vess turned from her command chair. "Explain." Solano hesitated, then decided on honesty. "Our sensors are detecting absence where absence shouldn't exist, not empty space, not interference. It's like something is subtracting itself from reality." The bridge crew shifted uneasily in their seats. "So you're saying something's there," Voss said, "because it's not behaving like nothing." Solano met her gaze. "Yes." The task force entered the coordinates identified by Hesper 9 at 0300 ship time. Nothing happened. No visual distortion, no sensor spike, no warning at all. And that frightened Voss more than any ambush ever had. "Hold speed," she ordered. "Active scans only. No weapons lock." "Aye, Captain." The Radiant Edge glided forward, like a knife pushed gently into dark water. The first disappearance happened behind them. Escort frigate Calder's Reach, position 7 in the formation, vanished between one heartbeat and the next. No explosion. No debris. Its transponder just cut off mid-ping. A voice screamed through the comms. "Contact lost." Voss spun in her command chair. All ships tighten formation. But it was too late. A second frigate blinked out of existence. Then a third. Panic ripped across the fleet, captains demanding answers that physics refused to provide. Solano stared at her console, horror looming in her chest. "They're not attacking the formation," she whispered. "They're editing it." That's when the night hunters let themselves be seen. Barely. Angular voids outlined by starlight bending around them. They moved without thrust, like ghosts. Weapon systems screamed for a lock and found nothing. On the hull of the Radiant Edge, something touched human metal for the first time, not with claws, with curiosity. And deep within the hunter's mind, a single thought pulsed outward. This prey notices quickly. Captain, they're matching our responses. Every adjustment we make, they adjust faster, then stop adjusting. All ships hold position. Power down non-essential systems. A stunned silence filled the bridge, followed by quiet obedience. Across the void, human lights dimmed. Engines fell idle. Weapons slept. The entire task force did the one thing prey was never meant to do. It stopped running. Out in the black, the night hunters paused. For the first time since the first star had blinked sideways, a wave of uncertainty rippled through their ranks. Prey fled. Prey hid. Prey screamed. Prey did not simply wait. Miles away, their leader, Threx, felt a subtle divergence in probability, a new tension in the pattern of the hunt. Interesting, he thought. Very interesting. What happens when the mouse stops running from the cat? One of the hunters drifted closer, so close Phos could now see its shape clearly. It was taller than a person, its limbs folded in a strange, almost ceremonial way. Its surface seemed to swallow light instead of reflecting it. A terrifying void. Her crew held their breath. No one fired. No one even spoke. The hunter tilted its head as if studying them. And then it just withdrew. All the shapes receded, the immense pressure lifted, and space returned to normal with an unsettling ease. The surviving human ships were still there, shaken but alive, unbroken. In the silence that followed, Solano finally let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. That, she said softly, was first contact. Boss nodded slowly. And they didn't kill us. No, Solano agreed, her voice grim. They judged us. Far away, in the black court beyond mapped space, an ancient being named Threx received the first report on humanity. The findings were unexpected. We were adaptive, unpredictable, and most surprisingly, defiant even while being watched. A feeling dangerously close to anticipation stirred within him. The galaxy, it seemed, was not done making noise. Back on the human side, survival didn't bring relief. It brought consequences. The moment our task force escaped the anomaly, Fleet Command sensors lit up, not with enemy ships, but with interest. Across the galaxy, quiet systems showed strange deviations. Background radiation shifted. Communication lagged for no reason. It was as if the universe itself was now watching us. Aboard the research vessel Radiant Edge, Dr. Annika Solano stared at the data. We're broadcasting without transmitting, she said grimly. They know how we respond now, how we freeze, how we wait, how we refuse to panic. An officer asked what that made us. Solano's answer was immediate, worth watching. The official report was buried, classified above strategic black. No press briefings, no leaks, at least not right away. Unofficially, rumors spread through spacer networks within days. Ships that just vanished without a fight. Dark shapes glimpsed only in reflections. Predators that didn't chase. Most people dismissed it as ghost stories. A few didn't. Shadow unit recruitment quietly spiked across 3 sectors. The night hunters returned, not to attack, but just to observe. On remote mining stations, lights flickered just enough to be noticed. On colony worlds, satellites reported sensor ghosts that vanished under scrutiny. Never any damage, never any loss, only reminders. They're conditioning us, Voss said in a briefing, letting us know they can reach anywhere. The first real cost came at Outpost Greywake, a small civilian refueling platform. When the hunters arrived, they didn't target ships. They targeted the people who noticed them. The disappearances were clean. Too clean. No bodies, no struggle. Just empty uniforms and calls that went straight to voicemail. Voss stared at the grainy footage, her face unreadable. "They're selecting," she finally murmured, her voice low. Solano agreed, his expression grim. "They're testing us. They want to see who reacts, who resists, who adapts the fastest when fear takes over." Voss swallowed hard. And the others? Irrelevant. That single word hung in the air, heavy and cold. The world couldn't ignore it forever, not after the survivors from Greywake started talking. They spoke of towering shapes that bent light, of voices that weren't heard but felt deep in your bones. But the most terrifying part wasn't what they saw, it was what they didn't. There was no rage, no cruelty, no chaos. Just cold, calculated focus. We were being measured. On the bridge of the Radiant Edge, Voss stood alone. The ship's lights dimmed for the long night. The real hunt was just beginning. She often wondered, what would she look like to a civilization hunter? A threat? Prey? Or just background noise to be ignored? The fact that the question even mattered to her was what she truly hated. Far beyond human space, an alien named Kelthrex reviewed his latest observations. Human behavior was a puzzle that fascinated him. They shattered under fear, yet somehow managed to coordinate. They argued endlessly, yet responded as one when pushed. They mourned losses, but it only strengthened their resolve. "I see the danger now," he thought. They evolved socially, not just biologically. That was incredibly rare and incredibly dangerous. Then the first message arrived. Not in words, but as a construct, a perfect geometric void hanging against the stars. Broadcasting a pattern array is couldn't decipher. It wasn't a demand or a threat. It was a question. Watching the pattern unfold, Solano held her breath. "It's a test," she whispered. "Of what?" Kessler asked. "Of whether we answer," Voss replied. For weeks, humanity was frozen. Committees argued, politicians fretted, and simulations ran endlessly. Meanwhile, the hunters watched. The disappearances became less frequent, but far more precise. They targeted the predictable, the ships that failed to adapt. Humanity was learning, yes, but so were the hunters. Finally, the decision came down. Voss stood before the command console, the Radiant Edge's transmitter aimed at the silent alien object. "What do we send?" the comms officer asked. Voss's reply was firm. "Nothing aggressive, nothing submissive. Send proof that we change." The signal that went out held no weapon schematics, no surrender. It was a compressed history of human adaptation. Medical breakthroughs born from war, societies rebuilt from collapse, art created from disaster, and science rewritten after failure. It was the story of us. Noise. Beautiful, defiant noise. The construct absorbed the transmission. For a long, tense moment, absolute silence. Nothing happened. Then, just like that, it vanished. It wasn't destroyed, not in any way we could understand. It was withdrawn. Solano let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. Her voice was steady, but her eyes gave away the fear. "Well," she said, "we've been seen." I kept my gaze fixed on the empty patch of stars where it had been just a second before. The void felt colder now, more watchful. "And now," I said quietly, the words hanging heavy in the recycled air of the bridge, "we wait to find out what the costs are." The silence that followed was louder than any alarm. What did you think happened next? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more. Thanks for watching. Phantom Static, where the phantoms speak through the static. Phantom Static, where the phantoms speak through the static.